Most people think Egypt was always the greatest power in ancient Africa. Schools taught you about Egyptian pharaohs, Egyptian pyramids, Egyptian gods. But they never taught you about the kingdom directly to the south that conquered Egypt, ruled it for nearly a century, built more pyramids than Egypt itself, and produced pharaohs so powerful one of them appears in the Bible. Their name was the Kingdom of Kush. And history tried to pretend they never existed. To understand Kush, you first need to understand the geography. Travel south along the Nile River past the borders of modern Egypt. Enter the land that is now Sudan. This is where Kush began. A civilization rising along the banks of the same great river that fed Egypt. Blessed with the same fertile soil, the same life-giving water, the same ancient sky. But Kush was not Egypt's shadow. Kush was its own world. Rich in gold, rich in iron, rich in trade. A civilization that developed independently thousands of years before the famous pharaohs most people recognize. The Kingdom of Kush was ancient even by ancient standards. Its earliest roots reach back more than 4,000 years. Long before Rome. Long before Greece. Long before much of the world had developed writing. Kush was building cities, trading goods, developing culture. The region known to the Egyptians as Nubia produced warriors, merchants, scholars, and kings. It was not a primitive land waiting to be influenced. It was a sophisticated civilization in its own right. One that Egypt both feared and respected. Kush and Egypt, centuries of history. The relationship between Kush and Egypt was complicated. For centuries the two civilizations were intertwined. Sometimes as trading partners. Sometimes as bitter enemies. Egypt invaded Nubia multiple times. Occupied parts of the region. Extracted its gold. Kush resisted. Absorbed. Adapted. The Kushites studied Egyptian culture deeply. They adopted Egyptian religious practices. Built temples to Egyptian gods. Wrote in Egyptian hieroglyphics. But they never lost themselves. They remained distinctly Kushite. A people who could absorb the greatest civilization of the age while keeping their own identity intact. That is not weakness. That is extraordinary cultural intelligence. Kush was wealthy in ways that made it essential to the ancient world. Gold flowed north from Kushite mines into Egyptian treasuries. Ivory, ebony, exotic animals, incense. Trade routes crossed through Kushite territory connecting Egypt to the rest of Africa. The Kushites were master warriors, expert archers, feared fighters. Egyptian pharaohs recruited Kushite soldiers into their armies. A kingdom valuable enough to trade with, dangerous enough to fear, and patient enough to wait for the right moment. That moment was coming. Then came a time of weakness. Egypt was fracturing. Political divisions, competing dynasties, internal power struggles. The great empire that had once dominated the ancient world was tearing itself apart. And to the south Kush was watching. Under the powerful King Kashta, the Kushites began pushing north, expanding their influence into Upper Egypt. Not yet a full conquest, but the beginning of something historic. Kashta was building the foundation. His son would complete it. That son was Piye. And Piye changed history forever. Around 744 BC, Piye launched a military campaign that stunned the ancient world. He marched north. City after city submitted to his forces. His army was organized, disciplined, relentless. The fragmented Egyptian rulers who had been fighting each other suddenly faced a unified force more powerful than anything they had confronted in years. One by one the ancient cities of Egypt fell. Memphis, the sacred city, ancient capital of pharaohs. Piye captured it. Hermopolis, Heliopolis, City after city added to his conquest. Then the ultimate prize. The remaining Egyptian rulers submitted to Piye personally. They bowed. They acknowledged his supremacy. An African king from the south was now the ruler of Egypt. Think about what that moment means. The civilization that had enslaved Nubian people, invaded their lands, taken their gold, now bowed to a Kushite king. Piye established the 25th dynasty of Egypt. The Kushite dynasty. Black African pharaohs wearing the double crown of Egypt, ruling from the Nile Delta to the heart of Sudan. An empire stretching thousands of miles. These were not foreign conquerors who imposed alien culture. The Kushite pharaohs were deeply committed to Egyptian traditions. They restored temples, supported Egyptian religion, honored ancient customs. Many Egyptian people saw them as legitimate pharaohs, not invaders, restorers, rulers who brought order back to a divided land. Now comes the fact that completely shatters what most people think they know. The Kushites built pyramids. Not just a few. More pyramids than Egypt. While Egypt built around 130 pyramids over thousands of years, the Kushites built over 200. Steeper than Egyptian pyramids. More numerous. Spanning centuries of construction. They built pyramids at Meroe, at Nuri, at El Kuru. Pyramids that still stand in Sudan today. Silent and magnificent in the Sudanese desert. Yet most people have never seen them. Never heard of them. Because they were never shown to you. Africa built more pyramids than Egypt. Let that truth sit for a moment. Then came the pharaoh who defined an era. Taharqa, ruler of one of the largest empires the ancient world had ever seen. His territory stretched from deep in Sudan to the shores of the Mediterranean. He was a builder, a warrior, a statesman. He constructed magnificent temples, expanded trade, strengthened the empire. Ancient records describe him as powerful, respected, feared by his enemies. And then something extraordinary. His name appears in the Bible. In the second book of Kings, Taharqa is mentioned as a king who sent armies to oppose the Assyrian king Sennacherib during the siege of Jerusalem. Whether his intervention ultimately succeeded is debated by historians. But the fact remains. An African pharaoh from the Kingdom of Kush was powerful enough to be mentioned in one of the world's most read religious texts. That is not a footnote in history. That is history itself. But great empires face great challenges. The Assyrians were one of the most powerful military forces in the ancient world. Armed with iron weapons, superior military technology, they invaded Egypt with devastating force. The Kushite pharaohs fought back, again and again, refusing to surrender easily. But the military technology gap was too great. Eventually the Kushites were forced south, back across their original borders. Their century of ruling Egypt came to an end. Most empires, when pushed from conquered territory, fade into obscurity. Not Kush. After leaving Egypt, the Kingdom of Kush did not collapse. It transformed. The capital moved to Meroe, a magnificent city on the Nile. Iron production became the foundation of a new economic power. Meroe became one of the ancient world's greatest iron-producing centers. Trade routes expanded. A unique writing system emerged, Meroitic script. Still not fully decoded today. Art and architecture flourished. The pyramids kept rising. Kush thrived for centuries after leaving Egypt. A civilization that outlasted more. Many of the empires that surrounded it. The people who conquered Egypt created something even more enduring than conquest. They created a lasting civilization. So why do most people know nothing about this? Why did your history teacher not tell you that African kings ruled Egypt? Why did your textbooks not show you the pyramids of Sudan? Because for centuries history was written by those who had reasons to minimize African achievement. Colonial-era historians actively downplayed or denied the African identity of the Kushites. Some even claimed the Kushite pharaohs were not truly African. Scholars have since thoroughly debunked those claims. Ancient art, ancient records, archaeological evidence, all confirm what should never have been in doubt. Kush was an African civilization. Its pharaohs were African people. And they ruled one of the greatest empires the ancient world ever saw. The erasure was deliberate. The restoration is overdue. Today the pyramids of Meroe stand in the Sudanese desert. Mostly unvisited. Rarely photographed. Almost never discussed in mainstream history. But they are there. More than 200 pyramids rising from the African sand. Proof that cannot be erased. Proof that African civilization was not waiting to be discovered. It was already building wonders. Already conquering empires. Already writing history in stone that has survived 4,000 years. The Kingdom of Kush reminds us of something the world has been too slow to accept. African history is not a footnote to world history. It is world history. They conquered Egypt. They wore the double crown of pharaohs. They built more pyramids than the civilization the whole world knows. And history tried to erase them. But 200 pyramids standing in the Sudanese desert cannot be erased. Kush was real. Its pharaohs were real. Its power was real. And its story deserves to be told. Did you know about the Kingdom of Kush before watching this video? Drop your answer in the comments below. And subscribe to Unveiled History, because the truth is always more powerful than the myth.